I trained in the Mayo Clinic. I graduated top of my class. I had deep, extensive knowledge in medicine, but I did not know the science of health. Western medicine is a science of disease care and disease management, not the science of health. I just talked to medical students in medical school today, and they still don't learn about exercise, the importance of sleep, about avoiding toxins, good nutrition. The model in medicine was built to keep you alive when you're dying. This is not a system created for health. And so everyone thought of it as like I come to you, you keep me healthy. And the reality is I come to you to make sure I don't have a disease. And if I do have a disease, give me the pill or the surgery to fix that. Stress is one of the biggest problems, and I think is one of the foundational problems that we have in this modern society. We know for sure, the studies are very clear, that your level of stress manifests itself into multiple different chronic diseases. How do we get down to the root causes of why we're getting disease in the first place, address those root causes to reverse chronic disease and also prevent chronic disease? And that's what basically functional medicine does.
Hello and welcome to the Exit Interview. Today we are here with Dr. Darshan Shah. You are a board-certified surgeon, a physician, and a longevity expert, particularly an advocate for functional medicine, and you're also the founder of Next Health. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's super. It's a big honor for me to be here. Thanks for having me.
We are very excited for you to be here. I think with everything going on around the world and the distrust with the medical system, East versus West medicine, now functional medicine, which you're going to educate us about today, people are seeking ways to control their health and manage their health, and what is the right thing to gravitate towards. We're seeing a lot of advertisements on TV for different medications. You're seeing a spike in GLPs, you're seeing concierge doctors. And so
supplements, everything.
Right. And so we're excited to have this conversation with you, particularly for our audience and our listeners who are going through it with their career changes or transitions. It's obviously been a very volatile job market this year. And so I think what would be a great starting point is for you to actually tell us about your origin story of your personal journey of being a board certified surgeon and then founder of Next Health, and how your health changed over that time as well.
Yeah. So, I started in medicine at a very young age. I graduated from medical school when I was 21 years old, and I'm 53 now. So I've been doing this for 30 years.
Wow.
And the first 20 years I spent just being a full-on surgeon. Like I was in the operating room every single day, sometimes even like 7 days a week. And when you're in the operating room, you don't just go for 1 or 2 hours. You're there for like 6 to 12 hours, sometimes even close to 20 hours, depending on how complicated the surgery is. And so I spent a lot of time in the Western medicine world of going to the hospital every day, doing surgery all day long. Sometimes they're elective surgeries, which means planned surgeries like cancer reconstruction. And then a lot of emergencies would also come up, traumas, people getting hit by a car or getting a newly diagnosed cancer that required an emergency surgery. It was a very stressful, time-intensive job. And so for 20 years, I did this. And obviously, when you're doing something that stressful for 20 years, it just really wears on your health. So I found myself 10 years, actually 12 years ago now, in the worst state of health I'd ever been in. And, as I was going through medical school and through residency, I was super healthy. I would work out every day. I would eat right. But for 20 years, I just didn't. And I developed diabetes. I was 50 pounds overweight.
Wow.
I had uncontrolled high blood pressure, and all of this cluster, we call it in medicine, metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome basically means that you are in a really horrible state of chronic disease and you're headed towards a heart attack, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, all the bad things, and an early death, basically. And another thing happened 12 years ago, which was I had my first child. I had my son, and I just had the stark realization after having this baby, like I need to be around for this kid to watch him grow up, to, help him through life, et cetera. And so I decided I need to make a big change. So I had a massive career transition after I learned the science of getting healthy. And we'll dive into that because, I was a Western medicine trained doctor. I trained in the Mayo Clinic. I graduated top of my class, all that. I had deep, extensive knowledge in medicine, but I did not know the science of health.
Yeah.
Right.
Western medicine is a science of disease care and disease management, not the science of health. So I went on like a year-long journey, just going to conferences and learning about nutrition. I became a certified nutritionist, I did exercise physiology courses to become a personal trainer, and I learned how to get healthy. And through that, I heard about functional medicine and learned about functional medicine. And when I got healthy, I was like, this is the kind of medicine I want to practice. So I started a little clinic here in Southern California in West Hollywood called Next Health, and that became my new career. I stopped doing surgery after I wound that down, and now we're opening these clinics all over the world where we can really help people get healthy and stay healthy and reverse their chronic diseases.
I just want you to sort of unpack what that's like. Because who you are, because you're graduating, you're like 21 years old, you're like Doogie Howser, you're at the top of your game, you're a surgeon, you have all this medical knowledge, you have all this, information, right? Like you're not someone who doesn't know. So to wind up in that state, like you said, you've got all these negative health outcomes, which you would think, like someone like you would never wind up there. What was that? Yeah, as a doctor, like what was that? Was there shame associated with that? Was there like what emotionally was that realization like for you?
So you would think that as a doctor, I would not end up unhealthy. But the reality is most doctors are very unhealthy, right?
And why is that?
Because you don't learn about health in medical school. You learn the same amount of health in medical school, health knowledge, like say, what is the benefit of eating well versus not eating well? Like most hospitals, a lot of hospitals, and my hospital was like this too, serves ultra processed food to the patients and to the doctors. There was a McDonald's in my hospital in Kansas City, Missouri.
Are you serious?
Absolutely. There was a McDonald's in our hospital. And so, every nursing lounge, every surgeon's lounge full of donuts and, just junk food, and so much caffeine. Like you just
I can only imagine the
subsists on caffeine and donuts and carbohydrates.
Right.
And, and then like, there's no talk about exercise in medical school at all, like zero. And this was, I went to medical school many years ago, but I just talked to medical students in medical school today, and they still don't learn about exercise. They still don't learn about the importance of sleep, about avoiding toxins, about nutrition and what is good nutrition. This is not part of our education because so much of medical education is, and good thing they do this, is taken up by how to diagnose a disease and treat that disease process, right? And so I always say, like, thank God we have Western medicine. If you get hit by a bus, if you get diagnosed with like stage 3 or 4 cancer, you have a heart attack, you go to the hospital. Thank God there's highly trained physicians and nurses that can keep you alive, right? And the technology is incredible, right? You look at the intensive care units and what the surgeries we do, it's incredible. Thank God we have that whole system, but it was never built to keep you healthy. Never.
Right.
And so I never learned about how to stay healthy. I just knew I had to work out because all my college buddies were working out. So we worked out together. That's it, really.
What I'm hearing you say is Western medicine is very reactive. As opposed to proactive.
Right.
And you had mentioned also the lack of sleep and not understanding the importance of sleep. I kind of want to talk about that for a moment because from the medical doctors that I know, they always talk about how they have lack of sleep during residency. Surgeons,
it's built on lack of
particularly,
sleep.
it's built as, and then you're doing your life and death on the table with very, very little sleep. How does that impact your stress levels and your
it's
health?
Terrible. So, when you do a surgical residency, which is learning how to be a surgeon, you are basically trained not to sleep. In fact, if you sleep, you're a weakling. And so you have to, it's called a residency for a reason, is you become a resident of the hospital and they call you all hours of the night for things. And so I remember many times being in the operating room and when you're assisting in the operating room, you have a little bit less cortisol, and you kind of like fall asleep because you're just holding a retractor or something. And I remember just like falling asleep, holding retractors in the OR. And you don't want to hear this, but any surgeon you talk to any surgeon during surgical residency, I guarantee you there were times they fell asleep during work. Okay. Whether it's
Wow.
in the operating room or outside. I remember, driving home after 3 or 4 days on call and falling asleep at a stoplight and the cops pulling me over thinking I was drunk.
Wow.
Like, no, I just got off 3 days of surgery.
Right.
I shouldn't be driving.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you're living on cortisol, you're living on high stress environments, and you're never told once that this is not healthy for you.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, you're told like, good, that's how you learn surgery.
Right.
That's how, it's kind of like military training. It's like,
Right.
yeah. So it's really not
It's like creating
meant-
a chaotic environment
Yeah.
that allows you to be the expert in a chaotic environment. So therefore you'll be the best
Yeah.
effectively. It's like
Exactly.
military training, like
it's
you
like
were
military.
saying.
It's like SEAL training. It's like,
Yeah.
you just create the most intense environment you can. So you
Yeah.
get really
Right.
good and you don't get scared of anything that comes through the door.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's no talk about health in surgery for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's like the
definitely-
that's almost like it's expected that you sacrifice your health in order to become a resident, basically.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how
Got
it is.
it. Got
Yeah.
it.
So, I think a lot of people are frustrated with their doctors.
Yes.
A lot of people are frustrated with the medical system.
Mhm.
And really, a little bit of that is misplaced because your doctor was never taught how to
Right.
create a state of health. And your doctor themselves were subjected to intense
Right.
training where they were told not to be healthy
Right.
to learn medicine,
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
this is not a system created for health. And so
Yeah.
Right.
the unfortunate problem is because of the way the system was set up, everyone thought of it as like I come to you, you keep me healthy. And the reality is I come to you to make sure I don't have a disease. And if I do have a disease, give me the pill or the surgery
Right.
Yeah.
To
to
treat
fix
it.
that.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what is functional medicine then?
Right. It's a complete rethinking of this, right? So what's happened over the last 6 or 7 decades since World War II specifically is Americans became unhealthy and so followed the Western world, right? And the reasons that happened are many. Number one, the massive industrial food system created to support the war turned into an industrial food system to feed the country. Secondly, we developed shift work, right? People started working all night and all day and 12-hour shifts and taking a double shift. And so
Right.
sleep became a major issue.
Yeah.
And then we became more sedentary as we used automobiles more to
Right.
get to work. And if you develop computers sitting in front of them. And so you had this massive chronic disease epidemic that occurred, right? And so because the Western medicine system was not made to deal with reversal of chronic disease, some really smart people started looking into like, this is not the way humans are supposed to live in a state of chronic disease all the time, managed by pharmaceutical agents. And so Dr. Jeffrey Bland, Dr. Mark Hyman, these are all pioneers of our field of what's called functional medicine. How do we get down to the root causes of why we're getting disease in the first place, address those root causes to reverse chronic disease and also prevent chronic disease? And that's what basically functional medicine does. Yeah.
Can I ask a question about, I mean, I get the functional medicine addressing, the issue for the consumer, but just based on what you're saying in terms of the training and just the mind organization of how physicians and surgeons are trained, is there also movement around changing
No.
that model, or is it just so politicized or so lobbied at
Well, I mean,
why is the model unable
I
to
think
change?
the model in medicine was built for once again for a very specific
Right.
purpose, was to keep you alive when you're dying, right? And so this functional medicine model is not playing well with that.
Right.
Okay, for a few reasons.
Right.
Obviously, there's profits in sickness, huge profits in sickness.
Right. But there's profits and there's both and industries
Absolutely.
are profitable, I would,
Yeah, the health and wellness industry is
Yeah,
also a
it's
multi-billion dollar
Absolutely.
industry. But these are two different industries.
Got it.
Okay. And so they actually butt heads a lot. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of doctors that don't believe in functional medicine at all.
Why?
And that's what created a massive problem in the last few decades. Well, a lot of the doctors that are trained in Western medicine believe that the functional medicine science is not based in the same science that Western medicine is. And so
Got it.
if you look at the way research is done to approve a pharmaceutical agent, you have these massive randomized controlled
Tests,
trials,
right.
right? And so you put 1,000 people
Right.
on a statin, another 1,000 people are not on a statin, but
Right.
you don't know. And then you see what happens to whether or not you die of a heart attack or you don't die of a heart attack, right?
Right.
How do you do that for carrots? How do you do that for an extra hour of sleep? It's just really hard to control the variables. And so there's not the same number of studies around lifestyle interventions. The other big problem is that to fund one of these studies takes hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
And so, you just don't have the funding because you don't have a big pharma company that can fund something like this.
Right.
And so these two industries are developing separately.
Got it.
And unfortunately, and you look, there's a lot of people trying to bring this to the forefront of mainstream medical knowledge.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy to see, the Waltons open up a new medical school founded in functional medicine, which is going to be the first one finally that is doing this. And there are some medical schools that have one or two courses, or they're bringing a speaker for one day. But these are industries that are developing separately from each other.
So how did functional medicine help you? Because when we started this conversation, you were sick, had diabetes, uncontrolled blood pressure, and autoimmune, and then your education and research into functional medicine. How did you apply that to your life, and what were the results?
Yeah, and that's the critical element there is I applied it to my own life and I saw that this stuff really works. And so here's what I did. I learned nutrition first. Functional medicine was just getting started to train doctors and train mostly like nutritionists and health coaches back when it first started. And so I went to one of these nutrition conferences and there was a speaker there that talked about functional medicine, and it perked my ears. And I was like, I got to learn more about this because it sounds like there's something there. And when I did a deep dive and went to some of the first functional medicine courses that were given, I started just trying the stuff on myself. I was like, well, why not? Let me see if I can get my gut health better. Let me see if I can modify my hormones and get my hormones better. I was a little bit older when all this happened. I was 42 when I had my first son, and that's what kind of launched this journey. And so my hormones were already declining because not just my age, but also my stress levels. And my gut health was horrible because of the food I was eating. It was just really bad food. And so I had tremendous amounts of inflammation. And some of the tenets of functional medicine are, number one, get your gut health in order. So solve leaky gut, which solves inflammation. Look at your hormones, because we all naturally decline our hormones, both men and women, and consider hormone replacement therapy. And so these are some of the things I did to start with, was reduce my inflammation, get my gut fixed, and start getting on hormone replacement therapy. And
Can
just
you
like
define leaky gut just for in layman's terms?
So leaky gut is basically when the barrier of your gut. Now your gut is one cell layer thick of what's called enterocytes. These are the smartest cells in our body, some of the smartest cells in our body, because they keep all the toxins in our food out and they absorb all the nutrients. Okay. Now this one cell layer thick barrier between the outside environment and all the stuff you put into your mouth and the inside, if it gets constantly attacked by things like ultra processed food, alcohol, even antibiotics, they're like a nuclear bomb to your gut protection, non-short anti-inflammatory drugs like Advil, your gut cells die off and they become separated from each other, and then it becomes leaky. Now toxins and bacteria get through to your system. 75% or more of our immune cells live in our gut. When these immune system cells sense bacterial fragments or even just bacteria and food fragments coming through and toxins, they go on hyperdrive. And that causes chronic inflammation. It's a hyperactivity of your immune system. And this leads to all kinds of chronic diseases. That's leaky gut in a nutshell. And I had that big time, really bad leaky gut. It took me like 6 months to fix it, but I got it fixed. And I didn't even know this was even a diagnosis in medicine, because it wasn't. It's not in any medical textbook right now that's being taught to medical students.
And how did you know you fixed it? Like, how did you, what was the before and after?
There was a test. So, I mean, first of all, I started feeling a lot better. And then there's markers that you can test for. And so everyone should know this marker for themselves. It's called HSCRP, highly sensitive C-reactive protein. It's a really simple blood test. It costs a couple of bucks to do. It tells you how much inflammation you have going on in your body. And so my inflammation marker went from like 12, which is highly inflamed, to close to 0, which means very little inflammation. And so I was testing this every like 6 months or so. Sorry, like every 3 or 4 months I was testing it. And then it went from like 12 to 8 to 6 to 0. Yeah.
And then what about the hormone therapy? Because when
Mhm.
people naturally hear hormone therapy, I think of mostly women and or people have undergone maybe like chemotherapy and then they need to or thyroids. So
Yeah.
how did you what was that and
Yeah.
why did you do it?
So hormone replacement therapy has been around for 5 or 6 decades.
Mhm.
The problem was that back in the 80s, there were a few studies that were done horribly wrong on synthetic hormones as well. And so these studies, one of them is called the Women's Health Initiative, told doctors that putting women on hormone replacement therapy would cause breast cancer, okay, and lead to more heart attacks. And then men being on hormone replacement therapy, they thought that might also lead to more heart attacks and maybe lead to prostate cancer. And so these studies were horrifically misinterpreted. It's probably one of the biggest crimes in medicine right now because for 50 years, we were telling women, don't do hormone replacement therapy. We're telling men, don't do hormone replacement therapy. And then it also got a bad rap because a lot of people were using testosterone to, get buff
Steroids.
as steroids, right? And the reality of the situation is your body needs hormones to be healthy. Women need estrogen, men need testosterone, women need testosterone. Exactly.
Right.
And so now we know, and you've probably been hearing in the news that finally all the warnings were taken away around hormone replacement therapy because we know that you should be looking at this if your hormone levels are declining. And so, I always say the story of my poor mom who never was offered hormone replacement therapy despite going to the doctor saying, I'm getting shorter and shorter every year. My joints are just aching. I feel like, I don't have energy. And I think maybe I should do estrogen. And they told her, no, you're going to give yourself breast cancer. And now she's 8 inches taller than she was when I met her, and she's had every joint in her body replaced. This is going to be, unfortunately, the destiny for many women that are like my mother's age, And so I think hormone replacement therapy for me personally was a game changer. My testosterone level was like 200 when I was 40 years old, which is really, really low. It should have been somewhere around 600-700, which is healthy. And so I started it and it completely changed everything for me. It gave me energy to work out. It helped me keep the fat off, keep the muscle on. And, I'm not doing it to a level where I'm becoming like a bodybuilder or whatever. I'm just using it for health.
Yeah.
And now we know both women and men being on hormone replacement therapy will lead to lower rates of cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, even strokes, and cancer as well. So it's a huge benefit for both men and women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about stress management and stress on the body, how that impacted you and in general people. What are the negative outcomes of not managing your stress and what can functional medicine do to help manage stress?
Yeah, stress is one of the biggest problems. And I think is one of the foundational problems that we have in this modern society, right? And so unfortunately, we all live very stressful lives and things like career changes happen.
Sure.
They're going to happen no matter what. It's just part of life. And what's also just as impactful to your biology is stresses like getting married, getting engaged, having a new relationship, having a beautiful child. Like these are all positive things that happen to us, but
They're also very stressful.
Right. But our hormonal systems can't
The moms
differentiate.
over here are like, yes, we know.
Exactly. Yeah. And so even a positive thing,
Yeah.
can be very stressful, right? So
Yeah.
selling a business, for example, like going into retirement, there's a stress.
Right.
And so the way these psychological stresses manifest themselves in our body through health consequences is through the release of a hormone called cortisol, right? I'm sure you've all heard of cortisol. And this hormone cortisol is actually very damaging. It was made, like, why do we have cortisol in the first place? Well, in evolution, when our body was going to go through starvation periods, like through winters, cortisol would cause us to pack on fat, right? So we could survive these winters. And unfortunately, we don't really need these hormones anymore, but they still are inside of us, right? And so what we really need to do is not let psychological stress turn into cortisol release. So how do we
Easy.
Yeah. How do we short circuit that system, right? How do we do that? So
Yeah.
there's a few hacks here.
All right.
And you know some of these, but it's really becomes more actionable if you know the why behind it. So psychological stress turns into cortisol release if it's sustained. Okay.
Right.
So sustained psychological stress then gets your brain and body thinking that there is something really bad that's going to come up, like a long winter, that I need to start secreting cortisol.
Right.
So the hack here is to stop the stress for a sustained period of time. So how do you do that? So let's talk about a stressful phone call, for example. Don't let it last more than 30 to 40 minutes. 30 to 40 minutes is that critical time window where cortisol starts secreting and stays at a high level. Okay. Do you Zooms for any reason?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you pay for your Zoom account?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cancel the subscription.
And keep it to that 40
because
minutes.
it- that 40
Exactly. Keep it to that 40 minutes, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, it
Actually,
ended.
The call is ended.
Sorry, guys, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Right. And then let's just talk a little bit longer term. Okay.
Sure.
So like throughout the course of the day, you wake up kind of like this high, especially moms, right? You wake up high cortisol. You got a lot to do, right? And then you just go into the next thing usually, and then the next thing, and the next thing, right?
Yeah.
But if
mornings are very important.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly, right. But if you can, after the morning routine is done, is give a few, maybe 30 minutes, even 15 minutes for a little self-care routine.
What does that look like?
It can be different for different people. Like you can either just go into maybe a sauna if you have one available to you for 15 to 20 minutes, keep your phone outside and just sit in the sauna. It could be just meditating. It could be doing a breath work practice. It could be going for a walk, all of these things where you just disconnect from the stress can be very
I love
powerful.
my 5-minute journal.
There you go. I have one too. I do one every morning.
I mean, it's everything.
Yeah.
Because it's like a moment to gratitude practice, I think, is a huge stress management tool. So it's just like, you talk about like what you're grateful for. And it's always going to be as stressful as our kids are. It's always like the laughter of my kids or like, like just little moments with friends or things like that. You just remember, bringing to the front of your brain the good things in your life and just remembering, okay, like I have things to hold on to be grateful for, and just priming your brain really for the day and thinking about, okay, what goals do I want to achieve? What things, some affirmations. And it's a great practice. And you can, I'll light a candle sometimes or have a cup of tea or whatever.
So you're doing this.
Yeah. Oh, I've been doing, and I have clients do it as a coach. Like it's when I'm dealing with, people. Yeah. It's like, you got to get your brain together, and ideally as early in the morning as possible. It's why I still wake up at 5:30 in the morning. But yeah, like all those things, like I said, so that's my favorite one, but a walk will do it. All those kinds of things. I definitely that morning is
beautiful.
Is key.
I have a 5-minute journal. I've had I have one a year for like the last 10 years, I think.
Yeah.
Do you have a 5-minute journal?
No. Well, I just want to, for a second, because I'm on the other coin of this, where we live in a hustle culture, and I think hustling is glorified in America.
Absolutely.
And as somebody who's very type A, when I do the like take a break and like pour myself some tea, or I don't journal, maybe I should, because maybe it'll change my life. I don't know. But I feel like I'm wasting time. And then there's this like added, it's like, well, I still need to get all these things done. And so it doesn't turn into very relaxing, because then I just feel like I'm behind again. So what are other things, like for somebody who would be like, no, like I need to either like take some sort of supplement or, go to a place where I can actually either do a workout or get some sort of like treatment, or, that is I can do it like once a week, not like every day type of situation. Like, what does that look like in functional medicine? Because I'll tell you, as somebody who has uncontrolled high blood pressure, when I go to the doctors and whatever, it's just like, here's your medicine, take your medicine. And that's what it is.
Sure.
And it never really gets under control. And, looking at me doesn't look like I have high blood pressure, but I do. And I have, for a while. And now it's like really uncontrolled, even though I'm on medication. So what's something a little bit for somebody like built like me,
Yeah.
who,
You're not
you
going to
know,
like my answer.
okay.
So look, I grew up in the same hustle culture you did, right?
Yeah.
And so I did not stop for years and years in a row. And hypertension is a really great example of this because I had uncontrolled hypertension as well. And I think about 50% of the people in the country do. And it's because of the sustained cortisol release that we are subjecting ourselves to on a day-to-day basis. This is not a once a week thing that you can do and ever expect to get ahead of this, right? And so it really is a mindset shift along two or three things. Number one, it's the realization that cortisol release happens after 30 to 40 minutes. It's not a once a week like massive dose. It's a every 30 to 40 minutes that you're sitting there stressed out and you're in that hustle mentality, you will have cortisol. And here's what's going to happen. Your body's going to get used to a certain level of cortisol and that'll become your new normal. So the next time you get a little bit more stressed on something, you go even higher. And then that becomes a new normal. And then it keeps going. And this is what leads to neurodegenerative disease, heart attacks, all the bad stuff that you don't want. Right. And so it really has to be something that you put into your day to day. For me, it's a morning routine. I have a 45-minute morning routine that I stick to no matter what. And then throughout the day, I build in little breaks. And what you will quickly realize is that it's not a waste of time because that break gets you more productive as the rest of the day goes on. There's actually a study that came out a few years ago. For every minute that you spend exercising, you add 3 to 5 minutes to the end of your life.
Oh,
Right. So you are gaining time by doing this. Right. And then you're also gaining, here's what you're also gaining when you reduce cortisol levels. You gain better sleep. And you know, when you sleep well, how much more productive is your next day? How better are your ideas and your creativity, right?
yeah.
And so it's not like an immediate payoff. Obviously, the immediate payoff comes from like getting your, stuff done, right?
Yeah.
But, sorry.
She's like, what's most relaxing is when I check off that to-do list.
Yeah.
Right.
When that person stops calling me for the deliverable, you know?
Yeah, I know. I absolutely know.
I'm very familiar.
There's a science-based technique called exercise snacks. Have you heard of exercise snacks?
No.
Okay, so we know what snacks are, obviously, but if you every 45 minutes, if you while you're working, if you take an exercise snack that completely negates all the negative health consequences of stress and sedentary behavior. So sedentary behavior is when you're sitting,
just sitting, right,
and on your computer, right?
Yeah.
45 minutes, you exercise for 3 to 5 minutes. It completely negates that sitting. And so we know that for every hour you spend sitting after 4 hours on a day-to-day basis, you add another 15% to your all-cause mortality. That means dying early for any reason, for any chronic disease reason. So, these things work. They really
Well, and this
work.
is why it's called a health journey.
Yeah.
So you're actually, you do need to actually change your behaviors. And that's a combination of actions that you change, but also what you're consuming in your body and how you're looking at your life. So I've heard you say like you're the CEO of your own health.
Right.
Can you unpack that?
Yeah. So the CEO of a business, you are responsible for a lot of things, right? And the number one technique that you use to manage your business is you look at numbers, right? You look at how much revenue did we do today? Were we profitable today? Were we profitable month over month? How many employees do I have, right? All of these numbers you're looking at, they're called key performance indicators, KPIs.
Right.
Turns out our body has KPIs as well. There's probably about 20 of them that we should be following on a daily, monthly, and quarterly basis. So we know the direction of our health, right? And so like you said about hypertension, like you sit there, you look great. Like you don't look like you have hypertension, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is our numbers go wrong decades before it manifests as disease because you're not seeing it and you're not feeling it.
And we're not tracking it.
Yeah.
So how do you track them?
So there's a few numbers that I can give you.
Yeah.
I mentioned HSCRP, that inflammation
Of
number.
the gut, right?
Yeah.
That's a blood test, right? And so there's a few blood tests that you should be following. Everyone should be following.
And this is every 3 months?
I do them every
month?
quarter for myself.
Okay,
And in our clinics. We do them every quarter, at least every 6 months. The critical element here is two things. Number one is you have to know what these numbers are. You have to know what's the optimal range, because your doctor will only tell you if you have a disease.
Right. So this goes into,
Right.
so you have a worksheet that you offer on your website, right? And we'll link it in the description below, but that people can use to help track this. But what is that conversation like? So doctors are very intimidating.
I know.
As somebody who's a young person who was in and out of doctors and bounced around from surgeons to this to that, and you know, and because I'm so young and a rarity of somebody who has AFib is at 37 years old, it was very like the first response is always, "You're so young.
Yeah.
You're so young.
Yeah,
like, are you sure?" It's like, you tell me, doc. Like, you tell me.
Through your Apple Watch you had AFib?
I passed out at home and ended up in the ER and almost had to have an emergency heart surgery that night. But years prior had gone to a cardiologist and got a workup and everything because I was having dizzy spells, and my Fitbit at the time, when those were popular, was notifying me. And they had said to me, like, well, you have some irregularities, but there's not enough here for me to do anything. So if it gets worse, come back.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
I hear this story over and over.
I'm sure.
So I didn't. And then end up years later, you know, 3 years later, passing out at home in the hospital, being the CEO of your own health.
What happened. Okay, so you trusted your doctor as a consultant to give you information that requires more longitudinal looking at like what's going on, right? Like you're seeing this guy one time, I don't know if it's a guy or a gal, but one time, and they're like, oh, let me just take a look at a few things here and tell you if something really bad is happening. No, there's nothing really bad happening. So go home and call me when you're really sick. And that's not how you run a business, right? You don't run a business by seeing a consultant only when things are like really bad and see him for like 20 minutes and he tells you how your business is doing, right? So becoming the CEO of your own health means you take personal responsibility for your own health, just like you do a business. You understand what are the key performance indicators of your health. Some of them are blood tests, like the biomarkers. And like you said, drshah.com/biomarkers, they're all there. And then you kind of take a little bit of taking the doctor out of the loop until you know something is wrong, because you learn what do those biomarkers mean? What is the optimal range? And you test it for yourself, which you can now do very easily. And you just follow them. And you just do this once every 4 to 6 months. And, if you do it for a while and things are going well, you can go down to 6 months, but we do them every quarter for our patients because we find, especially the older you get, the more you want to check.
Right.
So where do you get these blood tests?
So you can get them from any lab. We do them at our clinic at Next Health. We call it our baseline. You can get it from any lab. If you go to a lab and say, I want these blood tests, and then you can get them. There's a lot of online places you can get them as well. Like there's a company called Function Health, but they do a huge panel, which is more of a once a year panel. The KPI panel, you can get them from a lab yourself, and you should ask your doctor for them because your insurance should pay for them. And so this biomarker guide that I have, it'll tell you what they are. You can give it to your doctor, say, I want to do these. And if they argue with you, just say, look, like, it's my right to get these blood tests. When I ask for them, my insurance should pay for them. And I just want to know. And they're some of them might fight you on it. But I think
I've fought for blood tests before.
Right. You have to fight for them. Yeah.
Well, around my kids, when certain things were happening. And I was just like, something's not making sense. I was like, listen, I want you to test for this. I want you to test for this. And I had to, thank God I have great pediatricians and stuff, but it was more than one conversation around like, this is why I want to know. Like I said, insurance covers it, but you do have to kind of get in there sometimes and advocate, for the kind of test that you want. We're all like regular people trying to manage our own health. We're not doctors, where I think it gets practically challenging for people who are like, okay, like they're listening to you. I want to manage my health better. I want to do I'm not giving up my doctor, obviously, and that's not what you're advocating for, but you know what I mean? Like I want to work within the system that I have, maybe build out some other things in the world that I can use to really kind of take control of my health. I think what happens when you functionally go down the path of trying to do that, there's so much rabbit hole that you can get lost in, and people are it's like Instagram hears you talk about it.
Yeah, and you're getting ads.
And then it's like, oh, did you like some wellness?
How do you,
So I think the solution is how you navigate anything, right? Like if you're going out there to like buy a car, right? If you're going out there to buy I don't know, just pick anything, that's some new furniture, right? You do your research, you learn, you understand your preferences.
Yeah.
You understand who's like a reputable manufacturer versus not. And, right now, what I'm really talking a lot about is where we're developing this new wellness industry. It's really happening real time right now as we're going through it, right? Because since COVID, what's happened is that people understand that the healthcare system, the system that we developed over the last 100 years, does not serve the general population that wants to stay healthy, right? And so right now, live, we're developing this second system, which is a health focused system, a disease reversal system. And right now, we're all learning together, right? And so you have to do your research. You have to take the time to do a deep dive, right? And then, we do now have very good, a new tool that is very good at helping us actually, which is AI, And so I think there's a lot of enablement that artificial intelligence, whether it be ChatGPT or Claude, can help you with, because you can actually upload your lab results now and ask it questions and get some advice and get some direction about what to think about. I think, obviously you want to be very careful, not like blindly following the advice, but you're right. You have to unfortunately go down a little bit of a rabbit hole.
Right.
You also, I think, people understand how to find credibility and who's not credible, looking at the person's degrees and their level of education. So a lot of that has to happen too.
Right. Are there markers you say that people should like look out for? Are there things like as you're researching, like always look for this thing or always check? Like, how do you check the hood?
Yes. So how do you look under the hood of like what's reputable or not? So first of all, if you're going to any type of practitioner, make sure they're certified. I'm a board certified surgeon. We have all of our locations, our medical practices. If you're going to the back room of 7-Eleven, that's probably going to be a problem.
It's probably sketch, guys. Probably sketch.
That one might be a little obvious.
Right. Exactly.
But ordering things offline and all those kinds of things, it's,
Right.
They might be shipping out of the 7-Eleven.
Yeah, you don't even know.
What about biohackers?
Yeah. Biohackers is a great subject to talk about too. Just real quick to finish, on supplements, you can actually find this app called Supco that I use to rate all supplements. And they tell you like what are the legitimate supplements and what are not legitimate and what are high quality, because the supplement industry is the Wild West.
Wild West, right.
Yeah, Supco is really good at bringing quality to you. And then biohacking. Let's talk about biohacking. So biohacking is fantastic for bringing attention to certain things that people are doing, but none of it, unfortunately, is based in science at this moment in time, because you have influencers that are saying, do this because I do this, and you just can't go with that, right? That's like very what I call N of one thing that they're doing. Like they're trying something on themselves. They're saying it works. Unfortunately, a lot of biohackers are being paid by companies to try things and talk about them. So you have to be just very, very careful with biohacking. But a lot of doctors and scientists and PhDs are out there really looking into these technologies that are being promoted by biohackers and talking about them quite loudly on social media, through podcasts. Like I have a podcast where I talk about all these things and whether they really benefit you or not. So I think the idea here is find a trusted resource, find someone that's going to give you unbiased information and listen to it and listen to both viewpoints.
I think that everybody should probably listen to some sort of medical or health or wellness podcast that's put on by a certified professional such as yourself, to just educate and be able to navigate the noise. But for listeners today on the podcast, navigating a layoff, they're trying to figure out what their next career move should be. The stress management component, I think, is huge. We've been talking a little bit about hypertension. But if you uncheck your stress, how does that impact the longevity of your life?
Yeah. So stress is impacted by a lot of different factors and also impacts a lot of factors of your health. And so we know for sure, the studies are very clear that your level of stress manifests itself into multiple different chronic diseases. So remember we were talking about functional medicine. I said there's root causes of disease. Stress is one of 8 root causes of disease. And so there's only 8 of them. And those 8 things, if you keep them under check, the likelihood of you getting chronic disease is very low, and reversing chronic disease also happens. So stress is one of the biggest ones there. And so we know that stress leads to higher rates of all chronic diseases. Okay. And so obviously, like, the idea here is you have to keep your stress at a certain level, your cortisol levels at a certain level, so that you don't get into a chronic disease state. But look, the reality of the situation is like, we're all going to have stress. It's going to happen. And you shouldn't beat yourself up over, like, a week or a day or even a month of bad stress. But the idea is you can't live there forever, right?
Yeah.
Our bodies are very resilient, actually. There's another really good marker that is one of my biomarkers, I think KPIs everyone should follow. It's called HRV. Have you heard of HRV?
It's very
heart rate variability, right? So this is a marker that you can get from, like, your Apple Watch or Oura Ring or Fitbit. And what it does is, when these things, they all track your heart rate, right? And so what it tells you is the time in between heartbeats. And believe it or not, the more variable that time between your heartbeats are, the less stressed you are, and the more resilient you are to chronic disease. And in fact, you even get better sleep, you have better workouts, all of it. So HRV is a really good marker to track as well. To get it, you have to be wearing some sort of wearable device that gives you the feedback. But that's a really good way to know how well your lifestyle habits are impacting your stress level.
Right. Yeah. And how do you change, like, how do you adjust that if you know it's like in a range that you don't want it to be?
Yeah. So doing a lot of things that we talked about, journaling in the morning, having those breaks every 45 minutes, taking an exercise snack, meditation, breath work, getting good sleep.
Got it.
So being out in nature,
stress, it kind of.
Exactly. Are there supplements you recommend for heart health and for stress management?
Yeah. So, so first of all, let me just say, like, supplements are kind of, like, if you have a pyramid of health, right? Obviously stress management, nutrition, sleep, exercise is going to be the foundation of managing the negative consequences of stress. Like, if you work out, that is going to be, even just one day a week, that is going to be better than taking hundreds of dollars of supplements, But say you're doing all those things, right? What are some supplements that can help you really help with let's just say the damaging effects of stress on your biology? There's vitamin D, and the specific form is vitamin D3K2. Most people are very deficient in vitamin D. So that's one that is, like, top of my list. There's also omega-3 fatty acids. That's another core supplements. Creatine is also very helpful for both men and women. And then there's also, like, B vitamins, methylated B vitamins. These are activated B vitamins. So these are some of, like, the core supplements I recommend that almost everyone should consider taking, just because we live in the Western world. Like,
and that's not that,
driving down
like,
the street
taking
is
a
stressful.
multivitamin every day wouldn't be enough.
I don't think multivitamins are great for everybody. I don't think everyone needs a multivitamin. But if you don't have a good nutritional practice, if you're not exercising well, then you should probably just start off with a really good, high quality multivitamin.
Okay. And what about sleep? So you've mentioned sleep a couple of times. What's the importance of sleep? So
during sleep is when your body clears the junk out of the brain. Okay. And so we have very good signs showing that during the day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go into deep sleep, your brain is accumulating toxins, because your brain is so metabolically active, right? It's the most metabolically active organ in our body. It's burning this furnace of its mitochondria, which are the cellular energy organelles, constantly at a very high level. And so this creates, like, waste, like smoke. And only at nighttime, when you sleep, is all that waste removed from your brain. So if you don't get good sleep, all this waste accumulates in your brain. And over the course of your life, this will lead to Alzheimer's disease, to Parkinson's, to neurodegenerative disease. Yes, the people who do not sleep well, they have a much higher rate of getting neurodegenerative disease as they age. And so this manifests itself a lot sooner as brain fog, for example, as loss of memory, as just being tired all the time. That's an accumulation of toxins in your brain, actually, from our own metabolic processes. So sleep is incredibly important. number one, for clearing these metabolic toxins from our body at night.
Yeah.
Secondly, during sleep is when you consolidate memories. So if you don't have a good memory, it's probably because you're just not sleeping well. And another hack that people can use, like say you're studying for a test, if you study for 30 minutes and then 30 to 45 minutes, and then even go into a meditative state or take a nap, that consolidates memories 30% better than not taking a nap after studying, believe it or not. So I have a couple of nephews that are in college and they're like studying really hard for their tests. I mean, just take a nap after you're done with your study. So sleep is incredibly important for those are two reasons, but obviously you gain much more focus and attention with getting good sleep the next day. There's tremendous benefits for sleep. Yeah.
When you were going through your sort of journey and transition, from the outcomes that you had to, where you are now, what were for you some of the biggest leverage things that you did immediately that you felt really had a strong impact?
Yeah. So I would say probably the top three things were, number one, eliminating ultra processed food from my diet. I just totally stopped eating ultra processed food. And first,
was that hard though?
It was hard because I didn't really know what ultra processed food was. Believe it, even as a doctor, like no one taught us what is an ultra processed food,
And what was there something that was like super processed that you were like, I had no idea that this was, I mean, the donuts obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. And even the donuts, like I thought ultra processed food was something that came in packaging with like a bunch of ingredients in it, right? So, you just buy a donut, like who knows if it's ultra processed or not? Well, every single one by definition is ultra processed because refined grains are ultra processed, right? And so I did not know that. I learned that. I also learned that for me, every morning I would go have a massive frappuccino for my breakfast. And so
did you have a sugar crush?
Don't take the people Starbucks, doctor.
Not going to mention any names, but a certain coffee company got me addicted to this drink called a frappuccino. And I mean, I really believe like that's what like really led to an acceleration of diabetes. And so, there's things, a lot of like restaurant food. I ate at restaurants like pretty much 90% of my meals.
Right.
And, they buy ultra processed food to make into food to serve you. And so I did not know all this or realize all this. So there's a huge learning process there. But number one was eliminating ultra processed food.
Got it.
Number two was committing to 8,000 steps a day. I did not do anywhere. I did like 2,000 steps a day, and so I committed to 8,000 steps a day. And then, like there's some days
8,000
because the research shows that that's somewhere between 7,000 to 9,000 is probably like where you need to be. Yeah, it's not 10,000 actually. 10,000 was a marketing thing for a pedometer, but it's 7,000 to 8,000. Yeah, is where we probably have the most health benefit. And then I would say the hormone replacement therapy was massive for me. Yeah, because my hormone levels were really tanked.
So damage is reversible.
Yes.
You're a case study of that. Is all damage reversible?
I would say 90% of chronic disease is reversible. And even if it's not fully reversible, you're going to slow the progression of it for sure, right? I mean, Alzheimer's is a chronic disease process, right? And so a lot of people say, well, if you're going to get Alzheimer's, you're going to get Alzheimer's. Nothing could be further from the truth. Like just because your family members had Alzheimer's doesn't mean that is your destiny. And so you can do a lot to prevent it and to also slow the progression towards it by changing your diet, changing your lifestyle habits, those kind of things.
What do you find like for like diabetes specifically? Was that for you, that was the same solution? Or if someone's dealing specifically with like, because I feel like Americans like this is the thing that's chasing us down to the ground. What do you find are the biggest, like most important things you can change if you want to like sort of reverse your like sort of A1C numbers?
Yeah, great question. I'm so glad you asked me that. So for those of you who don't know, hemoglobin A1C is a measure of diabetes. Most people don't even find out about this number until they become diabetic. And then you're chasing it, right?
Right.
So this is an average of 3 months of blood glucose. So it's a simple blood test, another one that's on my guide that tells you over the last 3 months, what was your blood glucose? And so when you have it, 6.5 is the number where doctors diagnose you with diabetes. 5.7 and above is pre-diabetes. No one had checked it on me, including myself being a doctor, until I was having all of these problems. And then I was already at like 7.2.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was at 7.2. You know what it is today? 5.2.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm a case study of going from 7.2 to 5.2, right?
Right. And without medication. Or did you take medication?
I took medication at the beginning, metformin I took, but I took myself off of it once I got below 5.7.
Got it. Got it.
And so, if you measure it proactively, you know that optimal is 5.2 or below. And so you'll aim towards that. So what are the things you can do? Number one, eliminate ultra processed food. Number two is get better sleep, but also things that are not intuitive to people. Like, for example, if you start every meal with protein, eat your vegetables second. So number one, protein, vegetables second, and carbs last. That totally prevents you from having a high glucose level for that meal. If you change your snacks from something that is carbohydrate to something that is higher in protein or fat, like nuts, if you go from like chips to nuts, which is not a major switch for people.
Unless they're children.
Then you can totally prevent a glucose spike in between meals. Eating your last meal of the day 3 hours before sleeping, 2 to 3 hours before sleeping is also hugely beneficial. Going for a quick walk or even just doing some air squats or something, moving after a meal can be highly beneficial. So these are all like little tips and tricks that you can do to prevent diabetes and reduce your glucose level. There's a great new technology out there called a continuous glucose monitor, which is like a little patch you wear in your arm for a couple weeks. And it tells you when your glucose is spiking on your phone. And you can learn all these things through the
without having to do the prick
finger stick. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
It is a game changer. We try to get all of our patients to do a continuous glucose monitor for at least 2 to 4 weeks, just so they can learn how their diet,
how your body reacts.
Impacts their glucose levels.
I want to talk about inflammation, which is a big thing right now. There's new studies coming out that are showing that GLP-1s are helping with inflammation. Women, I feel like, and I can only speak from a perspective of a woman, get weeks where you're more inflamed than other weeks. What would you say do you recommend GLPs for inflammation management? And what else would you recommend for fluctuations of inflammation?
So inflammation from a medical sense is an elevation of that blood marker, that HSCRP, or having leaky gut. All of these, and there's other reasons you can get inflammation. And it's all because of a hyperactive immune system, right? So this is something you don't really feel until it gets really, really bad. So I think a lot of people think that they're inflamed when, for example, they feel like, their gut is
bloated.
Their gut is bloated or something. And that may or may not be true inflammation. Okay. So inflammation, the medical way of talking about it, is really just a hyperactivity of the immune system, which manifests itself as an elevation in some of these blood biomarkers like HSCRP. And some of the advice I have for GLP-1s and inflammation specifically is GLP-1s are really helpful because they help you manage your food intake, number one. And that's once you can manage your food intake, you take in less ultra processed food, even less alcohol for a lot of people, and you start healing your gut. And so you're treating your gut, which then will lead to lower rates of chronic inflammation, right? So that's how that whole pathway works from GLP-1s to a lowering of inflammation. Now, there's also new research coming out showing that some of the T cells in our bodies, which are one of the cells of our immune system, actually have receptors for GLP-1. So there might be a direct effect of GLP-1s on your immune system, but we don't know exactly what that is yet.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I know, I'm not a medical doctor, but but I notice like my hands will swell. My hands swell, and so my rings will be tight or anything like that. But one of the things that I did notice is both of my kids couldn't do dairy. And so when I was nursing them, I had to eliminate dairy completely from my diet. And I noticed in that time that the inflammation went
Went
down. Like my
away.
hands didn't swell anymore. I didn't have that like
Oh, when you
fluctuation
weren't eating dairy
when I
anymore.
wasn't
Yeah.
eating dairy, but it goes back to sort
Very
of like
common.
diet.
Mhm.
Oh, really?
Yeah. About 3 to 8% of people have a dairy hypersensitivity,
Hmm.
which causes inflammation.
Mhm.
And so, in fact, your gut might have been a little bit leaky, and some of the dairy proteins are coming through and causing the inflammation as well. So
Mm.
it's actually pretty common. And gluten is another big offender for this as well.
Mm.
Dairy and gluten are two of the biggest offenders. It doesn't mean that dairy is all bad. A lot of times, it depends on where you're getting your dairy from.
Mhm.
Is it organic? Is it
Mhm.
not organic? Those
Mhm.
kind of things.
Yeah.
But can I just ask about the gluten specifically? Because
Yeah.
I feel like when I was growing up, we ain't hear nothing about no damn gluten.
Gluten-free anything.
allergy. Like this was
Yeah.
like not a thing.
Not a thing.
Or was
right?
was it just we just didn't know
Yeah.
and it was a thing?
Yeah.
Is that what it is, as opposed to just it didn't exist?
Right, exactly. It's not that gluten sensitivity didn't exist. It's just that we didn't know how to test for it.
Uh-huh.
We didn't know that it could cause damage.
Right.
We knew about celiac disease. Okay, so these are people
right.
that get really, really bad allergic reactions
Right.
to gluten, and that require sometimes surgery. Okay,
Right.
However, we did not know that there were lower forms of celiac disease that were
Got
just
it.
chronic inflammation caused by gluten, and now we know that.
Got it.
The other problem was between when we were young to,
Mhm.
or I mean, you're even younger than I am, but to now,
Mhm.
there's a massive explosion of ultra processed food,
Right.
which has a lot of gluten in it, and so
Right.
people are just getting exposed more to it as well.
I see.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one more medical question.
Yeah.
Infrared saunas. So do they help with inflammation? How does
Yes.
that work?
So infrared saunas are probably one of the best kind of like biohacker innovations out there that actually have a lot of research behind it.
Hmm.
And we have really great research behind it because of in Denmark, they've been using saunas for a century, maybe more.
Right.
Mhm.
And they also have a really great medical system where everyone has their medical records in one place.
Mhm.
And so what they can do is say, okay, these are the people that use sauna regularly. And they even know, like, do you use it twice a week, 3 times a week, every day? What are your health outcomes compared to people who don't? And so these are massive studies done over years and years that show people that use infrared sauna have less hypertension. So this is actually a treatment for hypertension that you should consider. They have less Alzheimer's disease. They have less cardiovascular disease. And so a lot of that is mitigated through the mechanisms are, number one, decrease in cortisol release. Just your cortisol levels are lower when you're in an infrared sauna. There's also these proteins that are secreted in our cell called heat shock proteins that actually help you make more energy. They help you decrease toxins as well. Toxins are actually eliminated through sweat as well. So there's a lot of concurrent benefits going on at the same time. And plus, when you're in a sauna, you're just relaxed, right? You get that little break from cortisol from just being relaxed, you know? And so there's a lot of great mechanisms there.
Right.
Yeah.
If you were looking outside service wise into whether it's acupuncture or sauna or like what are 3 maybe sort of outside services that you like in your sort of top 3 rankings?
Yep.
Like if you were looking to reduce stress and like help like that you feel are the most effective.
For sure. So, obviously if you're going to look outside of just the lifestyle stuff, there's a few things that you can do that are going to cost you a little bit of money, but they might be actually very worth it. Number one is sauna. Try to find a sauna somewhere. A lot of people are lucky they have them at home. Most people don't have them at home. And if you don't, there's so much interest in it now that I think there's a lot of sauna facilities that are opening everywhere. A lot of gyms are getting saunas as well. So find a sauna somewhere. Try to do it at least 2 times a week for 20 minutes each time.
Okay.
It's really beneficial. Secondly, I would say something you could spend some money on is every once in a while, do like an IV therapy, getting an IV with micronutrients. We're all so chronically nutrient depleted that just getting like topped up and getting IV therapy can be really helpful. I personally try to do it every other week. And when I come back from any trip, traveling, I'll get an IV and just get my nutrient levels topped up. And then thirdly, as far as services go, there's also LED beds. LED light is really good that you can find in a lot of places too. So, you can buy like an LED light on Amazon for your face. You've probably seen it. A lot of people have bought those, but for your whole body as well, that can be extremely
And what
beneficial.
does that do? What does the
So
LED
that
do?
actually increases your mitochondrial energy production, and it decreases high blood pressure too through the release of nitric oxide, which is a chemical in our blood.
I gotta get these lights.
Yeah.
I gotta get these lights in my house. I
Yeah.
gotta get a sauna in
But
my
you know
house.
what you can do?
Exactly.
You know what you can do if you can't like really, maybe you can't
Yeah.
afford to do that, or you can't find it. Just go outside in the sun more often.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, like you just
Literally
go
sit in the
outside.
sun, like
Yeah.
vitamin D.
And
Exactly.
NAD, is that you recommend NAD in
Yes.
your IV drips all the
Yes.
time?
Yeah.
Is
So that's NAD is a molecule that improves energy production, and so highly recommend if you can do it, get an IV therapy with NAD.
yeah. What are the because I hear that people feel like a rush when they get NAD sometimes. Why does that happen?
So you probably hear that some people, when they get NAD, they feel a little bit of discomfort, and that's because of an immune reaction that actually happens with NAD. And so there are new molecules being developed, like nicotinamide riboside, that is called Niagen, that we can do that does not give you that immune rush. But then also the other rush that you get is afterwards. You just get a surge of energy because your cells, your mitochondria inside of your cells finally have the precursor they need, which is NAD, to make more energy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And over time, we know this through massive research studies. As we age, our NAD levels decline rapidly.
There's one more question that we'd like to ask you that we ask all of our guests at the end of the show, which is, what is your definition of success today? And has that changed over time from when you were actively being a trauma surgeon or being a surgeon to now?
Yeah. I mean, I think my definition has for sure changed, and for me, the definition of success is really having the bandwidth to fit in the things that I think are important in my life on a day-to-day basis, And so I'm not quite there yet, but I work every day to fit in things like time with my children,
Sure.
my morning routine, right? Travel with friends and family.
Right.
I mean, those are the kind of things that are important to fit in. And I'm doing more and more of that as time goes on. And I think, I'll be ultimately successful when I have a really good balance between work, which I will always work. I'm never going to retire.
Yeah.
I love
Never retire?
Never,
Ever?
never. I just think work is for me, it's super fulfilling.
Yeah.
And, I'm blessed. I don't have like a physical labor job. Like I can talk to people and impact their life. And so I always want to work, but having a balance is, I think, true success. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank
Amazing.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate all the education you're bringing to us, and we hope to see you again.
I would
Bring you
love
back.
to.
With lower blood
I would
pressure.
love to.
With lower blood
Yes.
pressure. Yeah, I'll have
We're
it
gonna
under
fix your
control.
blood pressure.
Yeah,
We're gonna talk.
yeah,
We're gonna talk.
We have to.
Yeah, no, this was such an honor, and thank you so
Yeah.
much for having me.
Thank you.
Next Health takes a proactive approach to wellness through advanced biomarker testing, giving you a clear look at what's actually happening inside your body. From there, their medical team builds a personalized treatment plan to help you feel and perform your best. If you want to take control of your health, use code EXIT for your baseline biomarker test and consultation, an $850 value for just $250 exclusively for our listeners. Visit Next Health Calabasas and start your wellness journey today.